Here we are with the training camp tracker. Luis Ortiz is on your screen. I'm Jason Bristol here on the KHO U11 streaming app. We are back from Texans training camp, day one. What was your big takeaway on a day where there's really not a lot of action, but there is quite a bit of talking?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think my big takeaway is, one, CJ is, not shying away from the contract extension talks, right? So he's saying, look, I'm focused on football. I really liked when he said, football is the one thing that has gotten me to this position, that to possibly get a second contract, right? So he's focused on football, letting his agent, David Mulugheta, handle things, and we'll see if it happens, right? Outside of that, the guys are saying, look, it's day one. There's going to be an evolution, right? We've heard them saying and see how things gel, and that's really... It's the truth. Last year we saw they had that slow start and then eventually going on a 9-game winning streak. I think it's reality for most of the teams in the NFL that they don't start off right out of the gate, at full speed. Things are going to take a little while.
And for the most part, I would say that the Texans are not shying away from the expectations. Certainly, Will Anderson addressed them head on.
Yeah.
D'Amico was saying, listen, the expectations, we've always had high expectations. I've always had high expectations here. Nick Caserio,
right,
he took a different approach, mentioning how it's a long season, and who would have thought that last year that the Patriots and Seahawks would have ended up in the Super Bowl. So, and CJ Stroud...
Same thing. He was around that same tone as Nick Caserio, where he was saying,
But he did say he thought that this was a better club, better roster.
Right. Yeah, not just because of the way the roster is built, but it's a year two and now year four of D'Amico Ryans, but year two of Nick Caley. CJ Stroud talked about it. Last year was about setting that foundation. Mm-hmm. Now, year two, he thinks what they can do and some of the strides they've already taken in OTAs, and it's about now establishing the things that he likes. How, he sees the field or the game in between plays and how he feels the game. So we'll see if they can, evolve and how they can grow and gel as training camp goes on. But yeah, I think they've built a pretty good team where we know that all 11 starters on defense are back, right? So we expect the defense to be just as good as last year. And then on offense, revamped offensive line. So that's going to be, one of the focus of this offense, obviously. And then the running backs, see if they can finally run the ball. They've brought in David Montgomery. D'Amico Ryan saying that Woody Marks looks faster. He likes what he's seeing from Jawar Jordan. So, you got three guys that I think he just mentioned. Those are our three running backs, RB 1, 2, and 3, and see how they can kind of come together and complement that running game.
You used the word evolve, which is evolution, which I think is part of what we have seen with this offense. It is evolving. It's been a bumpy road. Certainly, D'Amico Ryans, as I'm looking here at my notes, one of the things he was asked was, what do you want to see from the offense this early on in training camp? And I believe he mentioned pre-snap, which was making sure everybody knows what they're doing and getting to the line and doing things with intent, because it wasn't always a smooth operation last season. And then as far as running the football, it appears as though that is obviously a point of emphasis. The Astros, the Texans will have to do that. But also, D'Amico was asked, I believe by Landry Locker, what does running the football mean to him? And really, it boiled down to 4 words that D'Amico mentioned. It was block well, run well. Yeah. And while that sounds simple, and certainly the old ball coach, that's how they typically break it down. Unfortunately, it wasn't that simple last season, because they were trying to do things that I don't know if that offense was capable of, whether it was the running backs, the plays, the linemen who are out there, and based on the conversation we had with Landry Locker and Cody Stutes on Sports Extra the other night, it appears, though, the guys they brought in may be a little bit better at run blocking than their predecessors. Yeah. So certainly that's encouraging. And then you have David Montgomery. But again, you talk about evolution and evolving. I don't think we're going to know until we actually see these guys on the field, because we can talk about them on paper, but until they're actually on the field and doing it, that the eye test is going to tell us a lot, I think.
Well, two things. One, they don't even have pads on right now.
Yeah.
So, it's very, very early on. And Nick Caserio, when he was asked about the offensive line and if he thought that at some point during training camp, he would like to see that starting five evolve, to really come to fruition, really show up and say, okay, these are our starting five, so they can head into the season already knowing who the starting five are. And he said, yeah, at some point I think we would like to see that, especially once you get deep into training camp and practices start becoming more game-focused. He mentioned that Buffalo Bills game, which is the season opener. So it's very early on, but yeah, we'll have to see, right, as training camp progresses. And the other thing is, what's really head scratching is what you said about DeMeco Ryan saying it was so simple. How do you run the ball? Landry's question was, how does you run the ball well? How do you execute that, right? And then he said, like what you just said, right? Run well, block well. So I think it's a thing of...
It's a mindset, he said,
right.
too. That was another thing. I just looked at my notes here. He said it's a mindset.
Right.
And while the coaches had the mindset last year, it appears as though after that, it was anyone's guess based on some of the things that we saw from this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to say it's a lot of factors, right? One, Joe Mixon wasn't there. So you lost your starting running back, who obviously the year before that was really, really good, even despite whether the Texans had a good running game or a good run block offense or not. He made things happen the year that he did play. Now, also, you talk about, the offensive line, which Landry and Cody talked about on Sports Extra on Sunday, saying maybe this offensive line is more equipped to be better at run blocking. But then, can you do both? Can you pass pro as well?
Yep.
And is that going to be something that is it one gains and the other one gives away, where now if you're really good at blocking for the running backs, but then you don't protect the quarterback, and then you have defensive ends come in, or even the defensive tackles come in and sack your quarterback, then, that's going to be a problem. But it's just so many things. First year of Nick Caley's offense, is it the scheme, the plays being called? It's so many things that go into it. But, yeah, right now we're going to see if they can figure things out. I think year two, the expectation is to be better. But also, I think the expectation is for things to gel. One of the key words that they've used, we want to see how things gel, how quickly they gel. Well, the more, and continuity is one of the things that they always talk about. The more that you do it, DeMeco Ryan said it, it's like every job, specifically when he was asked about Nick Caley now going into year two. Every job, the more you do it, the better that you get at it. So he expects that he'll be better this year at calling plays. So I think the expectation should be that results should show up faster as well.
We are not allowed, per media guidelines or rules with the Texans, to tell you specifics about alignment along the offensive line or things like that. I will say, based on what we saw with CJ taking snaps, there was a lot of experience. There was a lot of experience out there for the most part.
Yep.
But when you look at...
Read between the lines.
It will be very interesting to see how or if Keelan Rutledge factors into all of this. That's a first-round pick, and typically you want to get your first-round picks on the field. So that will be an interesting thing and an interesting component of this offensive line composition.
So, as I mentioned, read between the lines, and you say that, taking into account Keelan Rutledge, how he's going to be coming into play into that, and being a first-round pick. One of the things that Will Anderson Jr. said today is he wants to be more of a leader, right? And when he talked about that, he mentioned Cade McDonald, who is a first-round pick. And I'm sorry, second round pick, but a high pick is what he meant to say.
But a lot of people projected him to be a first-round pick.
Right. And what Will Anderson went into, he said, now, I've had rookies before, but now I can take him under my wing. And he said, this is a rookie that is expected to come in and play. I mean, he's a second-round pick. He's a high pick, right? So I think Keelan Rutledge, you draft him in the first round. And I think Cody and Landry said this on Sunday as well. It's a guy that you draft at that position, you draft up that high because you expect him to come in and contribute. Whether that be at left guard or center, we don't know yet. I think that's going to play out. But to your question, I mean, I think the expectation is that he's going to end up playing and contributing, I would say probably in a major way.
Certainly a lot of the discussion or the headlines during this day one of training camp, and we've touched on it a little bit, was the contract talk, the extension for C.J. Stroud. It was interesting that Nick Caserio came right out and said we've had some productive discussions and that CJ has had the best offseason that he's had thus far. And CJ admitted, and I totally get it. When you're a rookie and you're just wrapped up your first season, you probably don't know the best way to handle an off season, and you're continuing to learn about the process and what's good for your body and how much of a break you need and things like that. And it seems like CJ's in a good place based on what he was saying, that he really has a grasp, I guess you would say, on the best way to go about things during an off season. And I thought that he handled the questions well about his contract, and Cody mentioned if he's going to have any issues about people talking contract and things like that, and he said no, and we mentioned this as we were preparing for KHO 11 News. Maybe I mentioned this, that I think it was a good approach, because sometimes when you say, I don't want to talk about a contract, sometimes that will lead people to think, well, it's obviously on his mind because he doesn't want to discuss it. So I thought he handled it well. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's always the best policy is just take the bull by the horns.
Yeah,
right?
Be transparent.
Right. You know, I think CJ today, he mentioned part of his job is pressure. That comes with his job. He knows as being a quarterback, especially a starting quarterback in the NFL, you know that pressure comes with that. The other day when he had his backpack giveaway event just a few days ago before.
That was Sunday? Sunday. It was Sunday.
Yeah, right. One of the things that when he was talking there, he said, you know, something that comes with the territory of his job is that he gets criticized at a national, even global level because of the position that he's in, you know. So he understands that. And I think that that's one of the things, though, that CJ does really well, even though sometimes maybe his demeanor, to a lot of us from the outside looking in, it looks like, man, I kind of wish he had a little bit more umph.
A little fire.
Right. Like we look at Will Anderson and the way he talks and CJ, they're kind of two opposite polars, if you will, two opposite sides, right? Like one of them's a little bit more energetic and the other one's a little bit more chill, calm.
And you wonder if the positions they plays a role in that. But anyhow.
Yeah, so but I think CJ is very, very grounded, and he's really good at keeping his cards close to his chest and keeping a poker face. You know, I think he
sometimes.
Yeah, I think he's done a really great job of understanding that he's going to be criticized. He's going to be, you know, there's going to be pressure and everything, and that he has to not let that get to him. You have to be able to compartmentalize and be able to keep that outside noise outside and not really let him get to you. So, and then look, today, like I said, keeping his cards close to his chest, I asked him about, hey, when you went in and saw the tape, you did some self-evaluation, what is it that you decided to say, look in the mirror and say, okay, this is what I want to work on this season, how I want to improve, because this is what's going to help me be more successful going forward? And he said, family, football, faith. Yeah. That was his first answer.
And then you really tried to pin him down.
Right.
A little more specifics, please.
Yes, elaborate, be a little bit more specific. And he laughed, and he's like, look, well, I think I'd rather keep that to myself. But he ended up giving up just a little bit. And he said, there are some things there. He said pocket movement was one of them. But that's the thing where he keeps his cards close to his chest. He doesn't really, when you look at Will Anderson Jr., he talks a lot about, man, the things that really take you to that process. He says a lot of it is off the field stuff, you know. You focus on all the small details, and Will Anderson a little bit more open as far as what he said. I wanted to get more upper body strength, and he said that was one of the things he focused on. So, you know, I think CJ handled it well. to go back to your question, and I think, especially when he was asked, do you want this conversation to stop at a certain point going forward?
Contract conversation.
Right, the extension. And he said, no, it doesn't really matter. I mean, he says, I'm going to focus on football. And he knows that that's really where it's going to come to a conclusion or get finalized is how he performs. If he performs well and he shows, hey, I am a starting quarterback, I'm a top-tier quarterback in this league, he will get what he wants.
And maybe they are pretty close. Maybe something is imminent. Maybe that's why he doesn't have any problems.
We don't know.
No, we don't. We don't know at all.
Nick Caserio did say something today as well. He said, look, a lot of times, he said, unless you're indoors with us every day, there's a lot of things that you don't know. And a lot of the stuff that you guys say comes with a lack of context. We can only speak about what we know, so.
What we do know about Jalen Noel and his non-football injury list is that it's a finger injury, appeared to have happened during some kind of off-season training recently.
Yeah.
And Texans, I got the sense they weren't concerned.
Yeah.
Tank Dell, obviously there's always a lot of excitement about Tank and the possibility of him rejoining CJ to form this dynamic duo. Tank is probably longer-term play here based on how Nick Caserio was describing it, that it's going to be a ramp-up period and I guess drill to drill, day to day to see where he fits. And the Texans, I think D'Amico said, we'll just see how it progresses.
Yeah, I mean, starting day one of training camp, and he's not training with the team. He's doing more individual stuff.
That tells you a lot.
Right. I think that says a lot. He's going to be on catch-up mode for, a period of time. It's kind of like in baseball spring training when guys, get there late or they've been dealing with an injury. It's like, hey, we got to ramp them up and get going. So he's going to have to catch up.
I think it's going to be a slow process.
Yeah, I mean, probably being cautious.
It should be. It should be.
D'Amico said he hasn't played ball in over 2 years. So you probably want to be very careful. I mean, we've seen videos of him, though, online that he's posted himself, and he's making cuts and everything. It looks good.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's how do you feel the next day, or when you're working 2 or 3 days in a row. How do you feel? How does your knee, your body bounce back?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of uncertainty surrounding Tank Dell because even if he does come back, and let's say he comes back week 4 or whatever, whenever it is, how will he look when he comes back?
What kind of impact?
Right, we don't know, right? So. There's a lot of uncertainty, but yeah, for sure, I think Tank Dell's a long-term play with Jalen Noel. I mean, Nick Caserio said just a few weeks, so he may even be ready for the season opener if it's just a few weeks. I mean, training camp's a month, and
everybody's body is different. Yeah. Will Anderson, I have a bunch of notes here. I thought Will should definitely be in contention year in and year out for like the Media Good Guy Award because he is so good and really, gives us thoughtful answers. And he talked about being a better leader. We discussed that, not just for the defensive guys, but the entire team. He also talked about CJ and the position where you are in line for that contract and someone's mindset. And he mentioned, and I just wrote this down and I've highlighted on here, is enjoy the process. Yeah. And I think that's just enjoy the process of not trying to race to the playoffs and the Super Bowl and living up to all the expectations, and that comes with experience. So Will gets it. And another thing that was heard today, I overheard someone say that we heard during the offseason program was there's Will blowing up every play and
wreaking havoc.
Yes, and I actually asked D'Amico Ryans. I said, it appears as though Will has not lost a step or is basically doing what he did during the offseason program. And and D'Amico had some interesting things to say. It sounds like when they are in the meeting rooms and showing people what it's supposed to look like. It appears as though Will Anderson Jr. is an example that is often used. So that was something that I took away from there. Anything else that stood out to you in terms of what anybody said or things that you saw or anything that just caught your eye today?
Yeah, I think D'Amico Ryans did say at some point that, was it D'Amico or Nick Caserio? I can't remember, one of the two, but one of them said that, I think it was Nick Caserio actually, they had a slow start. He acknowledged the slow start. Then he said from midpoint of the season on, he said we were one of the better offenses in the league.
Yeah, I mean, listen, how could they there was nowhere to go but up, because those first 3 games, and it may have even bled into the fourth, I crunched the numbers and it was like a historically bad offensive production based in the last 20 or 30 years.
Right. When he said that, it really caught my attention because yes, they did go on a 9-game winning streak, right? Was it because of the offense was so great? Was it an explosive offense? Or we knew how good that defense was, And so, I don't know. I was like, okay, I mean, I think I saw improvement. I don't know if that you were one of the better offenses in the NFL. That feels a little bit, far-fetched, if you will. But we'll see. I think
until this team goes out scoring 30, 40 points a game, I think it's always going to be defense first and then hope and pray for the offense. And what can you give us?
Or at least for me, I think, scoring 30 or 40 points a game is very difficult in the NFL.
High 20s.
Games are close. But I think for me, as long as we see something fluid, where it doesn't feel forced,
disjointed,
where you see, where you're not scrambling for not literally a Hail Mary, but just like, oh my God, like something to be able to happen out of the blue, right? Where you see that this team is like on the same page, and I guess that goes back to what D'Amico Ryans is saying: the pre-snap discipline, the pre-snap playing fast, everything pre-snap being on the same page. If you see fluidity and just smoothness, and you see, you'll get that feeling when the offense looks good. You see it. If you know, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, that will probably be a better signal than anything else.
And who knows if we'll see that in the preseason, the exhibition games, because the trend now obviously is for guys, not a lot of important players to play. So it may take until
it's going to be week 1, week 2, week 3, the first few games. I think after last year. One thing that I really took with me was training camp, take it with a grain of salt. Because, a lot of things, we do see, a lot of things we don't see, and it's just still practice. And then really, I mean, it is kind of a season. It's a league in which you ramp up, If you obviously want to start off strong, and if you can start off winning your first 3-4 games, great. But, it's a season, it's a league in which you really have to start growing week by week.
And I think Nick Caserio said training camp for him really starts Monday. Because that's when the pads come on, and this isn't the real thing. For him, training camp starts Monday.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to do it for our training camp tracker. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, if you're watching on YouTube, leave them below. Anything you want us to ask the players? We may just give us some suggestions and things like that. We will continue to be covering the team on KHO U11 News, Sports Extra, as well as the KHO U11 streaming app. Thanks for watching us here on this training camp tracker. We need to get these cameras back in sync because right now this is awkward. This is a lot of you, Luis. But anyhow, everybody, thanks
People love it.
Yes. Well, please, for your fans, this is the greatest thing ever. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.